On today's episode, we're sitting down with Worshipful Brother Mike Redman of the Rising Sun Lodge.
You're listening to The First Three Knocks, a Masonic podcast in the District of York, where we discuss topics for the betterment of Masonry. The opinions discussed in this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent the views of Grand Lodge or any other Masonic body. Now, here are your hosts.
Hey everyone, welcome to The First Three Knocks. My name is Brother Steve Sprott of Zaradatha Lodge in Uxbridge, Ontario. Today we are sitting down with Worshipful Brother Mike Redman of the Rising Sun Lodge, and we're actually doing it on the way to the annual Grand Lodge communication in downtown Toronto. So it's being recorded in the car with Worshipful Brother Bert Tellier and Brother Gino Scovio. And the quality obviously isn't going to be studio quality for this episode, but I think if you can make it past that, then it's going to be a very interesting episode for everyone. So without further delay, let's get into it.
Good morning, brethren.
Good morning.
We are driving down to the annual Grand Lodge communication with Worshipful Brother Mike Redman, Secretary of York District, and Brother Gino Scovio, of course, is in the car, and we're doing something a little bit different this morning. We're on the road.
We're coming live right in the car at 6:45 on the AM.
Yeah, and we're in traffic. We are in traffic. Worshipful Brother Redman, welcome.
Thank you, kind sir.
We finally were able to track you down and get you in a car.
Yeah.
That was part of the master plan.
That was the master
car,
plan.
So we actually had some time.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it looks like we're going to have about 3.5 hours of airtime.
I would imagine, based on the traffic, yes.
So, Worshipful Brother Redman, maybe you could share with the listeners your Masonic story. How did you end up getting into Masonry?
In late 2004, my good buddy Dave Cuthbertson, who is currently the District Deputy Grand Master of Georgian South, he suggested I look at it. He'd been a Mason for a few years himself at the time, and seeing as I've known him since I was 18 years old, there's a little bit of trust built between he and I, and he thought it would be a good thing for me at the time. My circumstances at that point, with respect to male influence in my life, that was kind of lacking. I lost my dad in '96 and my older brother in 2001. So
Wow.
there was no male influence close to the family, close in the family anymore. I was it. So he thought this was a good thing. I spent a fair amount of time doing some research. I didn't really know, of course, a lot about the craft. Not a lot of people do before they join. One pleasant thing that I learned after I had decided to go forward, by the way, I got interviewed. My initial interview for the Rising Sun Lodge was with Right Worshipful Brothers Butler and Hotham.
Wow.
Two legends.
How was that?
So the big guns. It was a little intimidating, to be honest. But I survived, so that was good. I joined in November of 2005. It was an emergent meeting, which, as we all know, gets right to business. I didn't know at the time what that really meant until I went to my first regular meeting and went, God, what's all this other stuff that we're doing? It's also at that time, Toronto York District, now known as York District, was just becoming an entity.
Right.
So there were new relationships to be had all around. positive time to come in for me personally. And it's been so far really quite a remarkable, that would be 14 years, I guess.
Wow, incredible. That is an interesting time that you joined, going through that transition. What do you remember about that transition of the splitting the districts?
Well, it was a done deal by the time I was a Master Mason. They had basically, at least from what I understand, they had made it a reality that the previous Grand Lodge, which I wasn't there, I did go to the first district meeting up in Queensville, and that one actually was, part of it was about what we wanted to be named as, and our first choice was York District, but Grand Lodge said no, you need to be called Toronto York District. And we continued to petition, and over time they changed that. So I think that's a positive move. But at the lodge level, I saw a lot of people getting opportunities to meet new people because of the fact that they were mixing with lodges that they'd never really associated with previously. And our lodge at the time too was struggling a little bit. We had at the time a cadre of younger Masons, and we had a cadre of older Grand Lodge officers, past Grand Lodge officers, but that sort of vital level of past masters just out of the chair a couple of years wasn't there.
Right.
And my speculation was it was because there had been some disharmony with respect to those who were in charge and those who thought they were in charge. The good news is, by the time I became master, that behavior wasn't prevalent anymore. For whatever reason, the individuals who may or may not have caused that, and I think every lodge goes through that. As a matter of fact, I've seen that as district secretary.
Yeah.
It's a cycle. In any event, those individuals who may or may not have exhibited that behavior chose not to, for whatever reason, during my first year as master. So, it was a pleasant year, and the second time in 2015, also full of challenges, but very interesting stuff. Actually, for me, it was a rather easy year because our current DDGM, Right Worshipful Brother Scott Rickman, he was master in 2014, and boy oh boy did he build up the lodge through a number of initiatives. So I was free and clear. All I had to do was degree work.
You inherited that.
And lots of it. My oh my.
Full-time degree work.
Absolutely. We had a full slate of degrees that year.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. I had no planning whatsoever. I just like, okay, here we go. Who's ready? And away we went.
Some of the questions we always ask are some of the challenges as master, and it sounds like you didn't have very many in your year as master then.
First year was certainly a challenge, adjusting to leadership of an organization that's a volunteer organization. I think one of the best ways of explaining leadership of that nature, and of course we've seen some really good leaders in our lodge. I'm kind of awestruck by the quality of leadership currently in the chair.
Kindy.
Oh well, it's well deserved. It's well deserved. But I came to discover that, for all intents and purposes, one effective technique was to, for all intents and purposes, say to the guys, "Okay, well, what do you want to do?" and get consensus, and then go, "Okay, follow me." Because once again, you're looking at a volunteer organization. My style of leadership was initially not effective, and I had to learn fairly quickly. That was born out of the fact that anytime I had been in a leadership or managerial role, it was, at least earlier on in my career, was in the military. And
Right.
That's a different deal. However, they also speak to leadership as an art. They define command as a legal authority, and they define leadership as an art of influencing people. So if you avoid weighing too heavily on the one and use the other, you're in pretty good stead. Second year was a lot easier. It's like anything. Anytime you do something once, you're doing it for the first time, you're consciously thinking about it. The learning curve is high. The second time you do something, you already have a good feel for how it's going to be like. So it was a much more relaxed year. I had a much more enjoyable time overall. And I would highly recommend going to the East more than once
Oh, really?
as a result
That's
of that
interesting.
experience. Absolutely.
I guess, like you said, it gives you a second run to really fine-tune the things you've learned the first time, and then the second time you just are a master at it, I guess, right?
Yes, and you have a much better idea of the realities of who's going to be cooperative and who's not. Mm-hmm. What the strengths and weaknesses of people are. It really comes out. I mean, as a matter of fact, as a case in point, I think earlier on in the year we had a situation where our senior warden was coming to the realities of the fact that this is a volunteer organization, and he was initially having difficulties with it, but that learning process has put him into a place where, for all intents and purposes, he's much more comfortable with the scheme of things, so to speak.
Yeah, but it really is a beautiful system, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It puts the appropriate challenge in front of you at the right time.
Absolutely.
Unbeknownst to you, of course.
Yeah, and the system, as a result of how it's set up, really should be adhered to as best as possible. You're actually doing people a huge disservice if you put them into a place where they need to skip a bunch of chairs.
Yeah. We hear that often, don't we? A lot of folks having to skip chairs. Is that been your experience?
I did. I insisted on ensuring that I was in both of the warden's chairs. I did skip a couple of different chairs, and luckily we had a couple of guys who were willing to sit in as master for more than 1 year in order to make sure that the other guys had that experience.
Right.
Because it's just not on as far as I'm concerned. I think most people would agree that you're actually begging for trouble if you put an inexperienced individual into the master's chair and expect him to perform.
Yeah.
And the case of it is that there have been lodges that have done that from time to time. Fanning out into the experience of my year as district secretary, I have seen and come to know at a different level the good, bad, and quite honestly the ugly of the district itself. Most of it's good, however, and that's nice. We've got some amazing people in our district, and a lot of people helped me along in terms of cooperation, and there was always smiles, there was always handshakes, there was always laughs. wasn't just the only time when it wasn't fun was the 2nd of April at Blackwood. That wasn't fun. But at that point, at least there was a couple of things that got squared away as a result of that. And even though it wasn't fun, I have to mention my great gratitude to worshipful brother Andy McDowell for holding my hand, so to speak, while the medical emergency came to its not conclusion, just as it evolved.
Right. Yeah, that was a big scare, obviously, and maybe share with us a little bit how you're doing since.
Oh, I'm good now. There were a couple of things that came to light, which was actually very interesting. But the long and the short of it is that I'm actually complying with my family doctor's instructions. I'd like to say that I had a medical version of what Ebenezer Scrooge went through during his night and visits from the three ghosts. And it motivated me to change my behavior. So I'm in good shape.
Good to hear. And going back in your experience a little bit, I mean, 14 years is young in terms of Masonic years, but certainly you've seen a lot in 14 years. What are some of your fondest memories thus far?
I think probably one of the fondest memories was actually one that you're about to experience yourself. As master of your lodge, you're going to be going in procession to Grand Lodge. The rest of us yokels will be already in there, and we'll be essentially applauding the procession of masters in. And what made it very special was Bob Butler was down there. He was my mentor during pretty much my entire Masonic career, and catching his eye that moment and seeing him smile, which you don't see often.
It's meaningful when it comes from him.
Sure is.
Yeah.
That's a very memorable occasion. I was very grateful to be asked to partner Scott Rickman, and had a great time overall, not only in the year where you essentially do your best to demonstrate that you're capable of doing the job, but also doing the job too. I've had a good time that way. Other moments, I've really enjoyed watching especially initiates experience their first ceremony, their initiation.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you'd have a great view of that.
Yeah. It's always neat. It's always actually neat to see really anyone go through a certain step. It's neat to see the master's collar go on an individual. And that was also a very remarkable moment now that it's mentioned. One of the most remarkable moments that I ever had, and it surprised me, was the emotion that I experienced once I took the master's collar off to put it on my successor.
Oh.
It was because it's a physical weight.
Physical, yeah.
But it's also there was some emotion attached to it, quite a bit of emotion, as a matter of fact, and I was kind of caught off guard by it. I had to wrap my head around and get back into the ceremony. So that was very remarkable.
Brilliant.
So watch for it.
Yeah. I'll be sure to note that. But it's interesting how those things creep up on you. or surprise you, as you said.
Well, it can. And, well, it certainly did the first time. A little less so the second time, obviously. But certainly the first time it did.
Mike, earlier you talked about great leadership and whatnot, and again, we've seen some fantastic leaders leading our district, and I have to say, on a personal level and in a personal experience, the leadership that Right Worshipful Brother Scott Rickman and yourself have portrayed this year through the district has just brought some tremendous harmony and has made a lot of these visits, be it official visit installations or just regular visits that you guys show up to, a lot of fun. You brought forth this amazing, what do you want to call it there, about the traveling gavel, the commentary on the sidelines.
Yeah.
And it really stirred up a lot of fun. Did you kind of vision that getting in as district secretary, or did that just come on the fly? And can you tell us a bit about that? Because again, it was a lot of fun watching that happen over the year, but more so just reading the commentary that would come out weekly.
I think everyone was waiting for it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm glad I'm glad that it did inspire people to get out and visit. That was the whole point of it. Actually, the idea, in a sense, did come on the fly. Scott and I had talked about a couple of different things that we hoped to accomplish. And of course, quite honestly, I'm going to go over and give kudos to you guys. One of the things that he spoke about was the development of a Facebook page, and looking back from the beginning of the year and asking the guys to develop a Facebook page, and then seeing the traction that it has created, and then seeing not only that, but where the social media committee has taken it, and it's way beyond our expectations. Now we have the app, now we have a podcast, we have all these things. We expected this, and instead of getting, and I'm basically, this is obviously an audio thing, I've got my fingers about an inch wide. That's what we expected, and what we got was something, my hands are now 3 feet wide. So that's wonderful. But visitation, we had noticed, had waned, especially at official visits. Over the past couple of years, we weren't seeing as many visitors come out, which was disappointing. I mean, it's and especially now that you guys have been out on a regular basis yourself, you see, you've experienced the value of it. You now know the value of visitation. But we were struggling in our district with respect to visitation. The first 3 official visits were typical of what we had seen, and the first 3 were, one was in September, one was in October, and one was in November. And that was it for 2018. So I decided actually to track it. I figured, okay, well, let's get some numbers together here.
You love the numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Love the numbers.
Absolutely. So I put together a spreadsheet. And then I realized that I wanted to find a way of transmitting this information to the district, but doing it in a positive way, and avoiding highlighting the negatives about it, and attempting to accentuate the positives. And I'm a big motorsport fan, and so I took that sort of step. When motorsport gets boring, that's when the real talents of the sportscaster come out, because he has to make this dramatic, even though it's not. But he has to make it sound dramatic. So I figured, okay, well, let's see if we can do this. And so I started writing it up as if it was really a race. And there were times where I might have used other analogies. I had a lot of fun with using Wellington Lodge's pip over Blackwood, and basically indicating that Wellington Lodge had met their Waterloo. That was a lot of fun. A bunch of military
references.
It was, that one I was particularly proud of. But the bottom line was that They were supposed to be fun. I'm really glad people enjoyed them, and mostly I'm really glad that it had it seemed to have a material effect. We, for all intents and purposes, doubled our average number of visitors.
Phenomenal.
From over the. It was just under 14, or no, just under 15 in the beginning of the year over the first three. Officials' visits to a little over 30, and in two cases we saw 58 visitors of the district in two
That's
different official visits. So that was
job well done.
I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of, and it's not, I like to think that, okay, you get the individual, you inspire the folks to do something, but they actually do the doing. So it was just neat to see more than one of the Worshipful Masters rally his troops, because that's really what it was about. People don't read these things and go, oh, well, I'm just going to go visit. No, what really happens is an individual, a leader within a lodge, will start phoning people. Say, okay, let's go out.
It's a spark.
Exactly, and I'm very glad that it had the effect that it did.
Well, it was a brilliant move, and it created a platform for exactly that spark, and we thank you for it, because it was really a lot of fun for everybody involved. Gino and I had the good fortune of interviewing the top two finalists and the winner in their lodge, and it was a really cool process. So I think hopefully we were able to keep some of that going in future years.
Well, we'll see what the next team decides to do. It'll be up to them as to how and what they do. Mm-hmm. I'm hopeful that what may happen is that in some way, shape, or form, wardens especially are incentivized in some way, shape, or form to get out and visit, because we haven't seen a lot of visitation from a lot of wardens. Mm-hmm. And you yourself know that's how you build relationship. You get out, you see how ritual is done well. Either way, you learn about ritual. Mm-hmm. When you visit, you either learn to emulate something that has been done well, or to avoid something that you may think has not been done as well as it could have been. So you learn both ways, and as I said before, you develop a network of people who you will be able to help in their time of need, and whom they'll be able to help you when you require assistance. And if those relationships aren't built, unless you got a really, really strong lodge, you're going to struggle. Yeah.
Well, I know today we're going to find out who the new DDGM is. If there's a suggestions box, I'm going to put in that we make you the honorary district commentator. Because again, those notes that you sent out over the district really did move some brethren to get out there. And once you got out there and you saw what was going on, you always wanted to go to the next one and the next one and the next one. So again, as Bert said, thank you very much for putting all that effort together, because it really did stir up the district in a very positive manner.
Yeah,
it was my pleasure.
So, changing gears a little bit, this is an interesting time that we're heading down to the annual Grand Lodge communication today, and I guess today is officially your last day of your term. Would that be fair to say?
Pretty much. In terms of the team change, I guess the exact moment of when the team changes is tomorrow morning, probably around 8:30 in the morning, when the DDGM-elect is invested and the DDGM's collar goes onto him and the cuffs go onto him. And once that happens, then he's the DDGM, and of course his choice as district secretary becomes the active one. We have few housekeeping tasks to do beforehand, but the first thing will be to hand over email login credentials, so now they can at least communicate with others via that means. Oh, probably in a couple of weeks, probably August sometime, I'll have the new district secretary over to my place, and I'll hand him a bunch of stuff. I'm in the midst of digitizing some of the files. We have physical files dating back to I think about 2016, and I'm in the midst of I want to digitize them all up to this past year. We'll keep those physical, and then hand over all the computer files, all the stuff that I've created, all the correspondence to him, and then show him a couple of things that I've done that have made my job easy. And not to say that he needs to do it, but this is how I did it, and away you go, have fun.
Right.
And then with respect to being next year's commentator, that actually depends upon Grand Lodge. In the event that I am appointed a Grand Lodge officer, and me being an individual who needs to be proven very clearly that, this has happened, I'm not holding my breath. So if the appointment doesn't happen, which would be unusual, but not something that is unheard of, then I'll carry on as a commentator. In the event that I am appointed, I can't, because I would be a representative of Grand Lodge, and I think some of the stuff that I said in some of the broadcasts, it was enough. Some of it was provocative enough to probably be outside the envelope of what Grand Lodge would want to have expressed by one of their officers in that year. You just in Lodge, although I haven't got any specific instructions based on observations, you just sit there and look pretty. You're not even supposed to do ritual. So we'll see what happens.
So going back to your district secretary role, which is winding up here this week, what are your fondest memories from the year? What are you most proud of, and what are you looking forward to in the future?
My fondest memories would be basically the collection of memories of just having some good laughs with a lot of people. That wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have met them in this capacity. I got to know all the secretaries quite well, the secretaries of the lodges, and of course these are very, very knowledgeable people about their own lodge and masonry in general. And I got to see 19 different ways of doing the same thing, which was cool. Because, that shows you that there's, just because it's a solution to a problem doesn't mean it's the only solution. And so that was neat. I'm most proud of some of the accomplishments that the district has reached. I'm very glad to see more than one lodge take advantage of the AED subsidy program. My wife was too, actually. She was very happy with that.
Dr. Redman approves.
Oh yeah, she sure did. Especially when one went into Aurora, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
So that was good. I was very proud of how the district stepped up with respect to meeting and exceeding the goals that we had set for ourselves in order to help along the Masonic program. I was very proud of the fact that examined and took steps to ensure that our financial or fiscal behavior was such that we were not leaving a stone unturned in terms of monies made and not necessarily getting out to the charities. There had been a situation before, I'm sure through no fault of anybody, just maybe a minor oversight in terms of procedure, that social events that had made a profit, the money didn't necessarily get out to a charity. Well, not this time. Every penny that was surplus, every penny of profit on every social function that we had has gone to charity already. So we've, I don't know the exact amount off the top of my head, but I know we're exceeding $14,000 contributed to 2 different charities this year.
Wow, incredible. Incredible.
That's amazing.
So everybody in the district should be proud of that one.
Absolutely. Well, we've made it to the Gardner. We're getting closer to our destination. Traffic wasn't half as bad, but that's also because we left before the sun came
Yeah,
up.
we anticipated it being pretty rough.
Again, Mike, you've come from an EA to a Master Mason to Worshipful Master to District Secretary. What are some of your closing remarks that you could offer to some of the brethren coming through the ropes, and maybe one day again going the course that you took, or maybe beyond, or maybe not at all? What's your advice that you could offer them?
From the EA perspective, I would say heed the words of advice in terms of daily Masonic advancement, even though it's just a little bit. Do your best to stay engaged. Hook on to an individual whom you respect and who will help you along. I think too many people figure that there's this highly structured way that we make a Mason from EA through to Master Mason, and it's not that way. It's to a certain extent, it calls upon the initiative of the individual to go forward with their education to a great extent. So I would say from the get-go, it's like any habit, you have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it before it actually does become a habit. Whenever you have an opportunity, I would suggest that you widen your scope of knowledge through experience, and that means taking the initiative to go out, even on your own, or actually at the Master Mason level, or at the Past Master or the officer level. You'd be doing yourself a favor and doing your lodge a favor and doing the guy a favor by grabbing that FC or grabbing that EA and say, hey, come on, let's go.
Yeah. Pushing the agenda.
Exactly. And that would help the craft at so many levels as well. Always look forward. Pay attention to what our standards of behavior are. I think it's important that we hold a higher standard and we check ourselves with respect to our behavior, both in and around, inside and outside the lodge room. I always like to use the analogy of our behavior being like a stone that's dropped in a calm pool of water. Those waves that are created, that's the effects of our behavior. And it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative, it has an effect on eventually everything.
Yeah, well said.
So that's my little bit of advice.
Excellent advice. Worshipful Brother Redman, on behalf of the Brethren of the Rising Sun Lodge, I would like to say a great big thank you to you for being a mentor, a leader, dedicated to our lodge and its improvement and the betterment of Masonry in general. And I don't think I'd be speaking out of turn to speak on behalf of the district to thank you for the hard work that you did this past year as district secretary. You made an impact. You've improved the district with your collaborative approach and hard work, and we're greater for it. So I want to thank you for that effort.
Well, absolutely my pleasure, Bert and Gino, and it's been actually a very pleasurable ride.
In traffic.
Thank you for getting me downtown in safety and security.
Yeah.
I'm going to echo that with thanks for being our first traveling podcast on the first 3 knocks.
Wow, yeah, that's cool.
Always something new going on the podcast. So with that, brethren, we'll bid you adieu, and we have some more content we're working on today. We'll be happy to share with everyone shortly, but we're off to parking and joining Grand Lodge. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the First 3 Knocks. Happy to meet, sorry to part, happy to meet again.